Hello, everyone, and welcome to a TTF presentation. Thank you for joining us on your lunch. So we like to start with a land acknowledgement. At Tacoma Tree Foundation, we acknowledge that our work takes place on Indigenous land, and despite generations of violence, Coast Salish peoples still live here, practice their cultures, and care for these lands and waters. We honor and respect the sovereignty of all tribal nations, both here and around the world. Our urban area was and is being built by immigrants and people of color whose labor and cultural contributions to the modern identity of Greater Tacoma we also recognize. Next slide. This is going to be posted on our YouTube channel, and you can also learn from our past webinars and some tree care series. And we also have a series, What is Ailing This Tree, that talks about some tree diseases that you might come across here in the PNW. So make sure to subscribe to that. Next. If you're not familiar with our work, we're a local nonprofit focused on reducing barriers to trees and green spaces in Greater Tacoma and the Puget Sound region. Tacoma is the city with the lowest tree canopy in Western Washington. Right now we're at 21%, which is huge because it just went up 1%. Which shows that our efforts are working. So we're very excited about that. And most of Tacoma's trees are concentrated in neighborhoods with the most socioeconomic opportunities. So as an organization, our energies are focused on reducing barriers to trees and green spaces in the neighborhoods with the lowest tree canopy. Across the city, the goal is 30% of tree canopy. And so in order for us to do this, we need to plant and successfully care for about 1 million trees. So planting trees, we believe, is intertwined with education. We think it's really important to talk about the importance of trees and also how to care for them. And so we want to acknowledge and thank Tacoma Creates as a funding source so we can have educational opportunities like this. 0.1% of your sales tax goes to Tacoma Creates and allows for arts, history, and education opportunities across Tacoma. So thank you, and thank you, Tacoma Creates. And then to introduce Ailene Ettinger is a senior research ecologist at the Nature Conservancy of Washington. She earned a PhD in biology from the University of Washington, focusing on community ecology, climate change, and urban ecology. She has worked in diverse systems ranging from Pacific Northwest forests, tropical bee communities, and coffee farms to suburban vernal pool amphibians, and killer whales in the Salish Sea. Her research toolbox includes field experiments, observational monitoring, meta-analysis, and statistical models. Her research on applied conservation challenges, such as climate change and habitat loss, builds from foundational theory in ecology and employs rigorous analytical methods. Whether at work or at play, she loves being outdoors in Washington's forest, mountains, and seas, hiking, skiing, camping, and cooking with family and friends are some of her favorite ways to spend time. So please welcome Ailene, and I hope you enjoyed this great webinar about her research and air quality. So thank you for being here, and thank you, Ailene.
Thank you so much. That was a great introduction, and thank you all for joining today on this hot Wednesday. Hopefully this is a good time to come in and cool off for a little bit if you've been outside. And yeah, grateful that you're spending some time with me over your lunch break. I'm going to skip over this because I was going to do a little introduction, but I already got such a nice introduction that I don't think it's necessary. I'll just say instead, I'm a senior research ecologist for the Nature Conservancy, and I love trees and I love nature. I have broad research interests, as you already heard, and I'm going to be talking about some research that I lead through the Nature Conservancy and in partnership with Tacoma Tree Foundation today. I am hoping that someone else will be monitoring the chat because I can't really see what's there, but I'll probably wait until the end for most questions. So if you could hold those or put those in the chat, and then we can review them. Unless you have a really urgent question or request, like you can't hear me properly, then please do speak up so that I know. Now, before I get started, I do have a lot of information to share with you. So I wanted to take a minute and just allow some space and time for grounding ourselves. So close your eyes and just take a deep breath in and exhale. We're here to talk and learn about the air we breathe. So I was grateful to have some time to take deep breaths. And as we get started, perhaps you could put in the chat one word that comes to mind to describe the air that we breathe. Don't think too much, just put in there. What do you think of? Wow, lots of essentials. I'm seeing. And warm air today. Yes, indeed. Essential and warm. Two good words for today. If you think of others as we move through, please do go ahead and add them to the chat, or also use that space for questions, comments that come up throughout the talk. So I'm hoping that after today's talk, you'll be able to summarize air quality health concerns in Tacoma, including those from the past, current ones, and perhaps what might occur in the future. I'm also hoping you'll be able to describe how air quality varies across the city of Tacoma and how it intersects with other inequities that are facing overburdened communities, including things like tree cover. And last, I'm hoping that after this session, you'll be able to identify some ways that you can take action today and sort of longer term to make the air we breathe safer. And to help get to those objectives, here's my outline for what I'll go over today in our talk. I'm going to start by giving a bit of air quality background and history in Tacoma, then share some new research that we're doing through our Greening Research in Tacoma partnership, including our community air quality monitoring results so far, preliminary results. And then the last section, I'll try to share some ways that we can use this knowledge and move more towards action to provide you with some kind of tangible steps that you can take to help make the air we breathe healthier. So we'll start with this air quality background and history in Tacoma. Some of you might have seen this in the news this spring, that Seattle-Tacoma ranked 8th in the country for 8th worst for fine particle pollution. And this is, not something that we would strive for. This was in a report by the American Lung Association. And this air quality ranking is due primarily to wildfire smoke. I'll talk more about that later. But this bad air quality, in particular due to fine particles, is a great concern for our region. And it's something that we need to work on for sure. And so what is this particle pollution that was mentioned in that that report in that news article? That was referring to fine particles in particular, which are called PM 2.5. And this PM 2.5, particulate matter 2.5, refers to the size of the particles. So these are particles in the air that are less than 2.5 microns in diameter. So really small particles. This image here is showing you, for comparison, the size of a human hair, which is 50 to 70 microns in diameter. And so you can imagine that something smaller than 2.5 microns is really quite small, much finer than the hair on your head, and finer even than dust and pollen and mold, which falls into the PM 10 micron category, which is also a pollution concern. And one of the things that these fine particles are the greatest air quality concern in our region here in Puget Sound, and it is their small size in part that makes them dangerous. So they can sometimes they can easily go into your lungs and sometimes enter the bloodstream, and they can cause heart attacks, strokes, even premature death to sensitive populations. And air pollution is especially dangerous for children and people with lung or heart disease, so sensitive populations. And Tacoma has been experiencing poor air quality for quite some time. It was designated as a non-attainment area, or in non-attainment with the Clean Air Act. That means it was violating the regulations, the goals, the enforced air quality standards of the Clean Air Act. And this was for PM1, PM10 at the time. So this was at this time, PM 2.5, which is the fine particulate matter we were talking about earlier, was not regulated. It was the Clean Air Act primarily regulated larger particled pollutants. But so Tacoma was designated as, not meeting those EPA Clean Air Act standards in 1990. And you can see this map here is showing other areas in Washington state that have been also historically non-attainment areas due to PM 2.5 or other pollutants that the Clean Air Act set standards for. This designation was then led to this led the EPA to lead to have to develop a plan for how to become in attainment with the Clean Air Act. And so there were a number of measures that were put in place in Tacoma to help reach those goals. And these included things like increased burn bans and, financial incentives for getting rid of wood-burning stoves and installing cleaner wood-burning stoves. So one of the primary sources of PM 2.5 is burning wood, and it's often for home heating. There are other causes as well, but that's one of the primary ones. And so this graph here is showing, what happened after those plans started to be put in place, after Tacoma was designated non-attainment, and then a number of policies and practices went into place to help it get into attainment. And so you can see this graph here is showing, there's a lot of different lines here. It's showing 3 different air quality monitors that are in the Tacoma region. Those are shown by the different lines. And it's also showing these horizontal dashed lines are showing the federal standards. So what are the lines of safe air? This 35 is the current federal standard for clean air, and the Puget Sound Clean Air Agency, which is our local clean air agency, has a slightly more strict healthy air goal of 25 micrograms per cubic meter. And so you can see that over time, the air quality is generally getting better. You can see these lines going down. So the PM 2.5 is going down. However, recently, or starting in post 2015 is the year that officially Tacoma was designated as in attainment. So in attainment with those clean air regulations, it was meeting those goals. Then you can see some spikes since then, and worsening air quality, worsening PM 2.5. Those spikes are primarily due to wildfire smoke. So not the home heating causes that were the predominant cause previously, but this is largely due to wildfire smoke. And they have identified this due to some modeling. So in this graph now, it's showing those same trends, but with the wildfire smoke removed. And you can see that without wildfire smoke, we no longer have those spikes that were occurring post 2015. So this recent worsening PM 2.5 in our region is largely due to wildfire smoke. And this pattern of worsening PM 2.5 pollution is expected on a global scale as well. So it's not just in our region where this pattern is occurring. It's worsening globally as well, and this is expected to increase into the future, increase even further into the future. So these figures here are showing some forecasts of expected numbers of deaths annually due to PM 2.5, and you can see the yellow bar is showing in 2010, and the dark red bar is showing what's expected with 2050. It's forecasted the number of people killed due to PM 2.5 globally is expected to almost double by 2050. And some of that is just due to simply, increasing population, but it's also due to increasing concentrations of PM 2.5, primarily in cities in the developing world, which often use, wood burning as home heating fuel. So this is a real concern, not just here in the Tacoma, Seattle area, but also around the world. So now to give a bit more fine context and tell you about some community air quality monitoring that we're doing through our GRIT project. GRIT stands for Greening Research in Tacoma, and it's a collaborative research endeavor that includes the Tacoma Tree Foundation and the Nature Conservancy, as well as partners at Asia Pacific Cultural Center, the City of Tacoma Urban Forestry, and University of Washington. And through this research, we're really aiming to build more knowledge and understanding about how human well-being and increased greening intersect in Tacoma. And it began in South Tacoma in particular. And for this work, we really strive to use community engaged research as a way to both collect data and further scientific knowledge and understanding, as well as increase awareness. And we also really work to integrate our research into urban forest management. So you can learn more at this website. But this project GRIT began really focused on temperature data in South Tacoma, and it was designed around the Madison District Green Infrastructure Project that was installed in this region, kind of shown by the blue square here in Tacoma, in the Tacoma Mall area. And our goal with this project when we originally started several years ago was to leverage this planned green infrastructure project to understand how people are experiencing heat and greening and also quantify its impact. And so to do this, we installed temperature loggers throughout the Tacoma Mall area before the large-scale tree planting and green infrastructure project began. And we quantified tree cover and temperature relationships, and also we're doing this pre-tree planting as well as post-tree planting, as well as conducting some qualitative and quantitative community well-being surveys and interviews to help understand how people are experiencing greening and tree planting and heat in this neighborhood. So this project began several years ago through a partnership. You can see here on the map where our temperature loggers have been installed across the city on utility poles. Perhaps you've seen them. And through this work, we heard a lot of interest and concern among community members in air quality. So we began to expand this work in partnership with the Asia Pacific Cultural Center into air quality and understanding how air quality intersects with greening as well. So to do this, we use purple air sensors, which are pretty accessible sensors that anyone can install outside their homes, inside their homes. They just need Wi-Fi access and power. And this allowed us to both increase awareness by giving purple air sensors to people, address data gaps. There were, prior to our project, there were a number of locations in Tacoma, and you can still see there are still other places that lack purple airs currently, so we don't have really good air quality data for many regions of Tacoma. But also to really build some scientific knowledge and the evidence base around how air quality intersects with tree cover and understand the extent to which urban trees might be able to mitigate air quality. This relationship is not well understood for our region. There are other studies that have been done elsewhere showing that, trees can help mitigate PM 2.5 and bad air, other types of bad air quality, such as ozone. In some regions, and other studies have shown that trees can worsen in some cases or prolong the sort of existence of air quality in a region. So at a fine scale. So we wanted to better understand what do we see in Tacoma? How are trees and air quality intersecting? So that's the other goal with our research here in this community air quality monitoring project. If you go to the Purple Air website someday, which I would encourage you to do throughout the summer, especially as we enter the smoke season, you can use it to help understand what the quality is for today and what's safe and healthy for you out there, what kinds of activities are safe and healthy. So you can use this bar here to help assess if air quality is good or unhealthy. And generally green is good. So if you see more green levels, that means the air quality is looking good. There are a number of different standards that are used and that you might hear me talk about today. So federal EPA standards that I mentioned are at an annual average. If things are more than 9 microns or 9 micrograms per meter squared, that's out of the healthy region. That's no longer in the green region. So that's the federal standard for annual values. On a 24-hour period, the standard is 35 micrograms. And then I mentioned already that our Puget Sound Clean Air Agency has a stricter healthy air goal of 25 micrograms per cubic meter over a 24-hour period. So I might refer to these standards at other points throughout the presentation, and those are have been developed through careful thought and monitoring and data of what's safe exposure. So our GRIT community air quality monitoring network includes 33 Purple Air monitors that we installed throughout the city this summer, and that was in a lot of that installation was through the Asia Pacific Cultural Center's Community Air Quality Monitoring Project. So this has been a great partnership. We've really increased the amount of air quality monitoring being done in Tacoma. In the data that I'll show you in a little bit, we also included 6 Tacoma Pierce County Health monitors that are placed at elementary schools and YMCA centers around the city. And so these are longer term sites that were established before our community air quality monitoring began. And so it helped us, get a few more locations of data. And this led us to a total of 34 monitors because some of these monitors didn't have good continuous data. So the data set and analyses that I'll show you include data from 34 monitors used in analyses from just a 6-month time period, because that's all we've really gotten so far, from September 2025 through March 2026. So I'll share what our preliminary findings are, some of our preliminary findings so far with this community air quality monitoring network. And I've been working on analyzing these data with this young woman, a student, former student at UC Berkeley, who did her thesis with us on this. Her name is Sammy Bachlig. So I just wanted to acknowledge her work on this as well. So what we've learned from this monitoring network so far, over the monitoring period that we've gotten to so far, is air quality was mostly good. You can see on this pie chart over the sensor period, over the monitoring period, there were 103 days when all the sensors were recording good, in the good range. And I'm including this chart or table here just so you can help interpret what good means and what the values are for PM 2.5. That's this column here. It was moderate for 76 days. So a fairly sizable chunk of days over that time period was moderate, which means that sensitive individuals should avoid outdoor activity. because they may experience respiratory symptoms. So that's a pretty large chunk of the time period, actually. And there were, that just means that one or more sensors, not all of them necessarily, but one or more sensors on those days recorded moderate levels of daily PM 2.5. And then there were a couple of days when at least one sensor, and it was only one sensor in each case, recorded unhealthy or unhealthy for sensitive groups. So really high values here. And those days were in winter. Those days were both in December and January, I believe. Just to give a little bit of context about that 6-month monitoring period that we've analyzed so far, that included the tail end of last summer's smoke season, or summer. So September is still within smoke season here. And last smoke season was not as extreme as some. So this graph here is showing, so this was our monitoring period included the tail end of the 2025 smoke season. And you can see last season was sort of a middle of the road, I guess, as far as number of days with poor air quality. Other years like 2020, 2018, 2017 had much worse. So many more days of hazardous or unhealthy air quality. We don't know what this summer will look like, but the fact that we had very low snowpack again this year for the 4th year in a row means it's likely that we could have an extended smoke season. And who knows what we'll see for air quality out here, but time will tell. The other thing we've seen with the data so far, as expected probably, is that air quality varied across the seasons. So this line graph here is showing the PM 2.5 averaged across all of our sensors during the course of our monitoring period. So from September 1st through March 1st. And you can see it varies quite a bit from day to day, but the worst air was recorded in January. And in some days, this is the local Puget Sound Clean Air Agency clean and healthy air goal, and you can see it did exceed that. The average across all sensors did exceed that on some days, and especially in January, though some during September when there was more wildfire smoke. Kind of another way of looking at those data is the number of hours with high PM 2.5. So the number of hours when PM 2.5 exceeded that healthy air goal of 25 was much, much greater in January, 17 times greater in January than it was in September. And so you can see that here. And the cause of this PM 2.5 varies seasonally. So in September, in the summer months, wildfire smoke is typically the cause of high PM 2.5 values. But in January or the winter months, it's not wildfire smoke, it's more wood burning as a source of fuel, and that combined with cold air inversions that can trap pollutants close to the ground surface that can lead to these lingering time periods with bad air quality in the winter. The other thing that varied seasonally was the time of day when air quality was worse. So in the summer during smoke season, I'm showing September here, the highest PM 2.5 values were in the afternoon. And this is a fairly common pattern with wildfire smoke, although it can be quite varied. So this is showing the average across all our sensors, and it tends to peak around like 3 in the afternoon, or it did last September. This is from one air quality monitor by the Asia Pacific Cultural Center. But most of them show this common pattern as well. Whereas in January, it's almost the inverse, where we tend to see the highest PM 2.5 late at night, so around 2 or 3 in the morning. at this particular sensor during January. So a different pattern than in September. And so I mentioned that we saw, well, this coincides with temperature inversions when we have the coldest air, as well as peak emission times from home heating. But this is one reason why, even though we often see the worst air quality in the winter, the summer can be really dangerous because those peak PM 2.5 times occur in the afternoon when there's more people outside being active, perhaps. And so even though we do see often higher levels in January, the exposure can be worse in the summer. The other pattern that we saw that we're seeing with our data is, variation across the city. So variation in space with PM 2.5. And this map here is showing the location of all our sensors colored by their average PM 2.5 in January. So green is healthier air, more red is a higher, worse air quality average. And the general pattern that we have observed is worse air further south in Tacoma. And this pattern, coincides with many other patterns of inequity across Tacoma. So I'm showing here Tacoma's Equity Index, which is a tool that the city has developed to help operationalize equity and transition into anti-racist city. So this is a tool that gets used by a number of different agencies and groups within the city. And the Equity Index includes a number of factors, including livability, such as expected life expectancy. It also includes environmental metrics, economic and socioeconomic factors, and more. And so they've used this tool as a way to prioritize things like putting in streetlights and other interventions that will hopefully help the city transition, as they say, to a more equitable place. But I wanted to use this equity index just as a way to help us understand how air quality falls in this, using our air quality data from the past 6 months. And as I mentioned, the air quality patterns that we are seeing generally align with other patterns of inequity across Tacoma. So you can see here again those same measures of PM 2.5 average for January. And if we look at it in relation to the equity index, when you have higher equity, such as you have in North Tacoma, the air quality is better. Looking at a few other indices that make up that equity index, so something like livability, we see the same general pattern. So worse air in locations where the livability index, which is partly made up of life expectancy, is lower. So lower air or higher air quality occurs in areas that are generally have higher life expectancy. And one last component kind of equity, I wanted to start tying this to tree cover or understanding how these patterns intersect. We're generally seeing air quality is worse in areas with low tree cover. And so this is again using citywide data. If we look, I looked at this at a little bit finer scale using LIDAR data collected by the city in 2024. So this allowed for really high resolution tree data to be collected. And we looked at average PM 2.5 in relation to number of trees within 25 meters, so about 80 feet or like fairly close to your house. You can think of this on the x-axis. So if you have more trees close to your house and you're monitoring air quality, you generally have better air quality, lower PM 2.5. And so this is, in some ways what's expected, but we weren't sure what this relationship would look like in Tacoma. So this could be I wanted to flag that this is a correlative relationship. We have a lot more modeling and dissection of the data to do to understand if it's causal, or the extent to which it is causal. In other words, are trees mitigating some of the bad air pollution? It likely this correlative relationship reflects both a reduction in pollution from sources. So if there's more trees, there may be fewer sources of pollution nearby, as well as mitigation of pollution by trees. So it's hard to separate out yet. We're working on some more robust modeling to help us try to tease this out a little bit better. The other pattern that I think is pretty interesting that we're seeing with the data is that conifers appear to be particularly good at mitigating air pollution. We're seeing this pattern that, the best predictor, the best tree variable predictor of average PM 2.5 was the number of conifers within 80 feet, rather than all trees or just deciduous trees. And this is, again, it's a correlative relationship currently, but it's in alignment with previous studies and experiments that have found that evergreen trees with really small leaves may be best for mitigating air pollution. So it's interesting finding, and I'm excited to dig more into this and see how much of this we might be able to sort of tie to a cause of conifers being good at mitigating bad air pollution. So we have a lot of next steps with our research. We're planning to continue collecting and analyzing data so we get a full picture across the year of the seasonal patterns and variation and different sources of PM 2.5, as well as the role that trees might play in helping to mitigate PM 2.5. And once we get these more robust analyses and the full picture done, we'll be excited to share the research with you, and we'll be, doing analyses and scientific publications, but also thinking about how we can leverage these data for advocacy and for increasing awareness about air quality as well. So that brings me to moving some of this knowledge into action. What can we do about air quality and air quality problems in Tacoma and in our region? And there's a lot of things you can do. I'm going to sort of break it down into two categories. Things you can do that will help now, that will help you now, and help other people as well breathe healthier air, and also longer term approaches that might lead to or could lead to better air quality, but will take longer time period to see the benefits. So things you can do right now to help improve the air that you breathe is one thing is just simply being more aware, tracking outdoor air quality. And you can do this by going to the Puget Sound Clean Air Agency or Purple Air website every day and seeing what's out there, and altering your behavior if need be based on what the air quality is going to be. So if it looks like the air quality is bad in one location, maybe shift and go to a different park for a walk, or you might need to leave your neighborhood sometimes if you want to get outside but the air quality is bad, or perhaps wait to a different time of day. The Tacoma Pierce County Health Department has distilled down the sort of many interventions you can take to 10 ways to improve your air quality and protect your health. And it includes some of these: following burn bans and just monitoring air quality and file complaints if you see violations. Their website is great. It's a great resource and lists a number of steps you can take. You can also do things like, when there are bad air days due to wildfire smoke, for example, focus on creating one space in one room in your house that has clean air. You can install an air filter. And again, Tacoma Pierce County Health Department has some really helpful resources for where to get air filters, how you can make them yourself affordably, and other great resources. And sometimes, I should say outdoors, wearing a mask outdoors can help prevent some harmful exposure if the air quality is unhealthy. Some more longer term approaches that you can take to help improve the air we breathe include advocating for policies that benefit clean air. And I have a number of specific examples here, but there's likely others as well. So the Washington State Wildfire Resilience Funding, House Bill 1168, from a couple years ago, or I guess last year, provided a funding pot over 8 years that was intended to be used for wildfire resilience, managing forests to be healthier, and also helping communities with wildfire resilience. That funding was proposed to be slashed dramatically last year. So it was saved in the end, or much of the funding was reinstated, but it's likely to be a challenge in future years with our budget crisis at the state level. And so this is something to keep an eye on and to advocate for with your representatives, that this wildfire resilience funding is really important. There's also policies under the Climate Commitment Act, Washington's landmark climate policy, that are tied to air quality rulemaking and grants, and the Healthy Environment for All HEAL Act funding, and I'll go into more details with some of those. So there are air quality rulemaking as part of our State Climate Commitment Act, and this came about because it was one of the critiques of California's cap and trade program that we modeled our Climate Commitment Act after. There wasn't enough reduction of health-harming pollutants, air pollutants, as part of that work. So Washington State tried to address this and included some air quality monitoring and rulemaking, which also included identifying air pollution better in overburdened communities in Washington State, and expanding the air quality monitoring network in Washington so we could better understand where the problem areas are, as well as setting air quality goals and working towards improving air quality. A challenge with this is that a lot of the sort of goals of this policy haven't really been fully implemented yet. So there's a grant program that's out there that can still needs to be finalized and awarded, that's tied to improving air quality in Tacoma as well as other locations. There's a air quality health disparity improvement account that was previously set at $20 million per biennium, and no money has been committed to this fund in the current year. So there's a great need for advocacy from you all and engaging legislatures. And there's a number of ways you could help advocate for that work. And the HEAL Act is another policy tool for helping to improve air quality, especially in overburdened communities. And so this is another policy that really needs advocacy from you all to reach its full potential for achieving environmental justice. And so there's a real need for broader community input on this. Unfortunately, this EJ Environmental Justice Council meeting has passed, but there will be other opportunities in the future, I'm sure, for advocating for full funding of HEAL Act implementation. And so I'll leave these QR codes up, and they link to other ways that you can keep informed of the Nature Conservancy's advocacy updates, of Environmental Justice Council meetings, and other ecology, air quality monitoring in overburdened communities, so it can help you know when your engagement will really be beneficial towards improving our air quality. And so with that, I'm going to stop. And, oh, no, I'm not. I wanted to mention also that in addition to these policy tools, healthy forests can be part of the solution too. So I mentioned there's there's some research already out there showing that trees can really be beneficial, not just for cooling our air, but also for helping to clean the air. And so participating in Tacoma Tree Foundation, some of the many opportunities that were shared at the beginning to help protect and restore our urban forests is another thing you can do. And this is helpful for air quality, but it's also beneficial for so many other reasons. So trees provide us with a lot of benefits in addition to cleaning our air. So yes, a lot we can do together to help improve our air, and I would love to hear your questions and comments at this point. Next question I'm seeing is for air quality sensors close to I-5 or South Tacoma Way, high volume roadways, what do you attribute the relatively good air quality sensor scores to? Lower East Side, including near arterials, or perhaps, yeah, it's relatively the worst. Yeah, there's lots of different ways, and this is another good question for someone from Puget Sound Clean Air Agency who had been monitoring those data and dissecting them for much longer than I have. But there's a lot of different factors that can affect air quality. And so it could be physical barriers between the roadways and some of those air quality monitors, so like preventing some of the pollutants on those highways from getting there. That's certainly one possibility. Could also be wind patterns and other things. Are we seeing any trends on the purple air monitors? Has there been a report summary of them? Well, I shared some of the trends from our air quality purple airs today, and I'm happy to send my slides out as a resource. There hasn't been a report summary yet, but that's a great idea, and I'd be happy to pull that together once we've done our full year of monitoring. I think that would be a great resource to share. Let's see, another question. Is there any progress of working with tribes to help reach goals? I'm not sure about other groups. I know there's a lot of effort, and so the Puyallup tribe, for example, has an air quality manager they do their own air quality monitoring at the tribe, and it's certainly something that they're concerned with. And we have been in touch with them, and we don't have any tangible projects working together yet, but we've certainly talked about it and talked about working together to analyze data. And they have talked about, they monitor many different types of pollutants, much more than just the purple air network that we have, and including black carbon and a range of other things. So they're monitoring a lot of air quality, and lots to do. But I think there are some funding opportunities available to tribes also to monitor and mitigate air quality. So that's the sort of thing that we really need. Let's see. Someone said, curious if you're using or collecting any wind gauge data in your analysis. If so, are you using any gauges beyond NOAA's? I haven't started incorporating wind into my analysis yet for this, but that will be a really good thing to include when we dig deeper into the data analysis. And I probably would start with the NOAA data, but if you have thoughts on other data that I should use, please let me know. I'd love to hear your ideas.
They're asking, what area is that in the North Sound that was non-attainment for particulate pollution in the past/present?
Oh, okay. Are you talking about the whole Seattle area, perhaps? There's the State Department of Ecology has a map that shows the areas of non-attainment, and if you click on each particular area, you can see what the particular pollutant is that was in non-attainment. So that's a great resource for some of these questions. And yes, so there was a question about, are the 6 Tacoma Pierce County health monitors that I included also purple air devices? And yes, they are. So you can see them on the Purple Air website if you go there. Thank you all so much for the great questions and for attending today. Please don't hesitate to reach out for follow-up questions, but we'll send some of these links and resources out in a follow-up email.
Yeah, we can do that. We can totally do that. Thank you so much, Eileen. Thank you so much, Julia, for starting us off. And I hope to see you all at one of our walks or one of our work parties. Thank you so much for being here.